this conversation going into so many different areas. It's like, it's like starting with a spring and going off in different directions, like different streams of different rivers. And I hope that each person who's listening also discovers how many different creations that they can make of their own life as they discover who they are, and how important it is to just be able to connect with one another, to share. And this is how we are going to co-create the kind of world that we would like to live in. And I would like to remind our listeners and to request and invite everyone to really feel and dream and know, to become aware of what kind of life they want for themselves, for their families, their loved ones, and for the world. Because unless the world is in a certain way, no one person can live in the way that they fully want. The whole world has to transform, and it is transforming and changing together. And I hope that this conversation helps everyone to see that this is happening. Welcome to Co-Creative Conversations from Co-Creator Circle. I'm so happy today because we always give these podcasts which are to ignite inspirations. And I like to have a variety of people who I feel are co-creating a world, who have a feeling for a wider sense of what they are doing, like a little ripple that we place in the fabric of time and how it ripples out into the world. I'm also finding all the time that I'm speaking to people who are not only walking their talk, but also talking their walk. And that's so inspiring for me. I'm Meenakshi, and I'm in conversation today with Nova. Nova is an ordained healing practitioner, and she has a wonderful podcast, which is called Poppy's Field Project. You know, today, Nova, is the first time that we're really speaking to one another, the first time that we are virtually meeting one another. And
Yeah.
I like that a lot because I was thinking recently that uh, we meet one another, we meet strangers all the time. We
Hmm.
don't know anything about one another. And then we
Right.
explore and we discover something new. So that's what we're going to do today. And
I
let's see
love it.
what our listeners get from it.
Well, the first time we actually talked, I was like, wow, I actually could be friends with this person. You're really fun. So, but yeah, I think it's good to actually to have it kind of more secretive now. Now we get to actually kind of explore that. It's very creative.
That's right. Well, I was very inspired by seeing how many podcasts you have done because for us, it's something new that I've started doing.
Mhm.
We used to have,
Yeah.
what would you like to tell me about that, about podcasting?
Gosh, there's so much more too. I actually started, I think it's been like 2.5 years now. And it literally was just my friends and I having conversation, and I picked two of them that that we would always just talk on the phone for like 4 hours at a time, and I was just like, you know what, we need to have this on record so that way people could hear about it, because we get into philosophy and etymology, astrology, whatever, a lot of the occult wisdom stuff, and so we're just like, the world's kind of needing a little, wake up call to the things that we're talking about. So yeah, I mean, it's been a journey. And then because of it, there should be by October. I'm kind of waiting right now for September to roll in, because I'm an astrologer, and my progressed uh, balsamic moon is ending in September, which means it's a whole new beginning, and then it goes into the new moon. So it's going to be like this whole new transition for me. So I feel like I'm just shedding everything off, and the podcast has really, given me the opportunity to really express myself and um, we get a little wild on there sometimes, because there's no editing, and we don't want to be too, oh, what's the word? Not polite, but just, politically correct. We want to be able to just express ourselves and not be judged, because I think that's really important when you have a podcast, because there's too many council culture stuff going on. And I encourage people to, kind of just be free when they have a podcast, and not really care what anyone thinks, because it's not about popularity. It's about, meeting people or just learning something new, and you're not going to get that when it's so structured. Like I have a friend that wants to do this other podcast and she wants it structured. I said, no, I'm not going to do it that way. I go, it can be different from what I'm doing now, but, it's going to be, still to the point where, I'm going to be the director pretty much, because, I have a certain thing that I want to expose and, share with the community. So it's been a lot of fun. Matthew and Mariah are my co-host. I started Poppy's Field Project on Facebook actually in 2016 and decided to delete it off of that. For reasons, because I just don't want to be on Facebook anymore. And I'm kind of one of those, not anti, but I want to be known for not social media. I want to affect people on a deeper level. So yeah. How long have you been doing podcasting now? Has it been like a couple months or 3 months?
Yeah, well, I'll say it's been about maybe 3 or 4 months, so not very long.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting for me. I don't know if my son will want me to say that, but and years ago, before anybody had heard of podcasting, I'm talking of like more than 10 years, maybe 10 years ago. And
Mhm.
my son had written a book on podcasting and blogging when everything was so new. Um, and that was
Wow.
the first time I'd heard about it. He even had a podcast. At that time, it was just, weren't Zooms and all that, and it was
Hmm.
just audio.
Hmm.
And it was really interesting for me. So I think it was always at the back of my mind, but I never thought it's something I wanted to get into till recently. I was just asked to start this podcast. And it really helped me to realize that this is what I like to do. I like to introduce people to one another, to connect people to one another, and to connect myself also, to understand what everyone's doing. So from the things that you just shared, there's so many ways in which I can go. And
Hmm.
that's what I think is so exciting,
Hmm.
especially today when AI has come in a big way. It's not that it's a new thing, it's been around,
Right.
you know. I realized we have to be even more human.
Mm.
And when you get into an escalator, to an elevator, everyone is studiously trying not to look at one another. And I'm saying, or sometimes you get in, like I went today, and there
Yeah.
was this person, and he was talking it was a short, half a minute ride, up. And we all laughed and became so friendly, It was
Oh,
so nice just because one guy decided that he will just talk to us and just make us feel
yeah.
at ease, and I think this is so important because one of the things you mentioned was the cancel culture,
Mm.
uh, and not wanting to be on social media. And I was speaking to somebody, and they said that it's very interesting. No, again, now I'm trying to see how careful should I be, because she says I work with people in so many different countries, and it's only in the US that people get so easily offended.
I know.
It's surprising to me, young people getting offended and canceling.
It's true. It's true. It's so true. Like I actually have to remind my friends, and they're pretty good about it, but if they get offended with something, I'm just like, look, you need to work on that. That has nothing to do with anything. Like that's something that you were taught, and I'm just being myself, or am I? I'm trying to figure out if I'm being authentic, because we've been programmed in so many ways. And so it's like, picking out all the programming. And that's kind of what my podcast is about, is like learning how to actually be yourself, and know what you're looking at, what you're saying, or, because it's interesting. And I think it's kind of fed by these movies and TV shows and podcasters and astrologers or whoever that are, out there, even, I find like a lot of people on that watch TikTok, on Telegram, they are very, they believe everything they read sometimes, and they get very offended. And I just kind of like, not everybody, but it's out there. And I think it's because, people want to express themselves and that everyone should have equality, but then they want to, kind of tie you down a little bit. It's kind of been a judgmental thing, in the United States pretty much my whole entire life. It's very fascinating because I have to remind people, like this has nothing to do with you, and I have to apologize sometimes. Just say I'm sorry. I'm not really in the greatest of moods right now, so don't take offense. If I have, it's you got to forewarn Americans. But
Since you have been here, I've been here for about a little more than 20 years. Was it like that earlier also? Did people easily, or did people not meet others who had a different point of view? Do you think this is the first time that people are actually because this had surprised me when I came here, that even
mhm,
though there's so many states and people from all over the world,
mhm,
people tend to stay in little pockets,
right.
of people who are like them. You're supposed to declare which who you'll vote for in
Mm.
advance. It's not like you'll decide according to the situation. So I'm wondering, is it only now that people are meeting others with different points of view?
I mean, I think that it's starting to open up a little bit, especially after I call it the pandemic. That's just my opinion. Um, because I mean, I remember when I was a kid that you could just run the streets. Your parents would call for you, out the window or the door. They'd say, get home at this time. You could actually go, and I remember my mom would always have me go borrow a cup of sugar from the neighbor or something like that if she didn't have any and she was baking something and she's like, I gotta have it now. But today you can't do that. It's, nobody knows each other. I don't remember the last time that um, let me think about this. Like I've moved around so many times, so I haven't had to have like this developed relationships with like neighbors. But I don't really know. Like even my neighbors today, they are not really necessarily always the kindest people, but it's just their situation. So I think that you know I think people are more easily offended now. I'm trying to remember, like, I remember when I was younger, like a teenager. When I became a teenager, that's when it became more difficult, because you were kind of judged by what you were wearing, like if you were wearing a brand, and because I wasn't raised, born rich or anything like that. So not that I had hand me downs or anything like that, but I got some new clothes. But my mom, she drove this big boat, and I was embarrassed. But then I realized now, like how silly was that just to be embarrassed over a stupid car. But that's kind of way it's always been, like always keeping up the Joneses here in the United States. And so there's been more judgment, I would have to say, and I kind of just observed and watched it over the time and learned to not be offended, and just say that this is not my stuff. But yeah, I mean, my friends now, no, not at all, But I think the majority of the people in the United States, I mean, especially with like, BLM and the native tribes and how they're trying to express themselves and find a part of where they belong in the world. And so and then you have this transgender thing happening on top of that, because back in the time when I was raised, if you were gay in my hometown, you get beat up and stuff like that. It wasn't okay. So if you want to say that that's offensive, yeah, that was a huge ordeal back, because it was a conservative town, even though it was liberal, it had a liberal arts college. And yeah, it's very fascinating. I have to agree with you that but I've had to learn how to speak to other people so they don't attack me or get offended, and so I think feel like America is so young that we kind of had to, and then we are just a melting pot of different cultures, and all of us have this DNA that is mixed of, I have like 5 or 6 different, different races or of, tribes, whatever, of Europe and here in the United States. And so I think the United States is just literally like trying to find itself and claim its own culture. And so when you're trying to get that, you can be really easily offended because not everybody has the same ideas because of no, there's not really any tradition except for football or sports. I mean, really, that makes
We
any
can
sense.
change that. I think the work that you're doing, the work that many of us are doing, do you feel that that can change this kind of a culture? Because I think we do meet people. I know even when you and I were talking, and I said, I wonder what draws us to one another, because what you are doing may be very different from what I'm doing. And you said, I think you'll be surprised to find that there are things that we can connect with, you know? So
Yeah.
I think just that little thought that I will find something that I can connect with. But
Hmm.
how exciting to meet someone who has a different point of view, because then
Hmm.
you can see the world in another way. You have an opportunity. You don't have to adopt someone else's point of view, but how wonderful to know that there are it gives that to me is freedom,
Hmm.
you
Yeah.
know? Yeah,
Yeah.
so
And you get to be more authentic. You don't have to worry about what other people are thinking about what you're thinking of, and or if they're going to judge you. And I think that the work that I am doing actually, and I am seeing results. And it's not me because I'm just a reflection of everybody. So when people come to me like, "Oh my God, well, you helped me, this is that," I'm like, "Well, no, you're just finding that within yourself. I'm just here to help you see that." Because um, we've had open discussions after our podcast the entire time. I mean, we, maybe a day or two here that we've kind of skipped, but it's a safe place where people can come in and be themselves. I mean, if they're rude and interrupting, that's different. But we can have open conversation and people can say their piece without anyone being offended or attacking. And I've been manifesting that the entire time. Like I don't want these outside people that are going to be rude and interrupting, and like because I want to see a better world in that aspect where we can be patient with one another. And my life has just kind of forced me into that role, learning how to have patience at the same time, yet be solid and being assertive in my own power as a woman and not letting anyone walk all over me, because even like my co-host, I'm the last one that has the last say, and that's my power. I'm like, if you want a podcast, go do it on your own, because again, I think that's the way it is with a lot of musicians, and I actually dated a musician, and he always has issues with people in a band because they all want to put their own thing in it. And he's just like, I want it to be my thing. And I'm like, well, you got to assert that, and say, this is the way it's going to be. I mean, unless you're open to having, um, other ideas. But, I really am adamant about how do we speak to one another? Do we know the language, and And it's not correcting each other, it's literally undoing it all. And, because the English language is very complicated. And I'm sure as a person that it might be your second language, it can be confusing because there's a million words for one word. And it really is what I meant,
Yeah.
and so it's kind of like, well, what does it actually mean, and so, because are we actually cursing one another when we have, because I mean, there's like vibration, and that's something that the Hindus, really understood, was that the vibration of words are very important. And I think that's why people are offended, honestly, all the time. I think it's literally because of the language, and they don't know what they're saying, and they don't know what I'm saying. And so it creates this conflict. And it was done on purpose. It's called double speak, and it's in legalese as well, because God's law and legalese are completely totally different. The word legal, I just found out, means undoing God's law. Well, I know that. I was like, whoa. I was shocked when I heard that. And I'm not talking about like some God that, is at a cloud or whatever, but it's to me, God is like my higher self. It's the one, it's the all, it's the one that, puts us all here. It's not a religion. It's just why we're here. It's our thought, or our mentalism, our mental mind. And so that's kind of what I kind of study. And we go into physics, like we went into the electric universe, and learned about magnetism and electricity. And I actually was just in Colorado, or I still am in Colorado, but I was up in um, Telluride. And I guess that's where Tesla, I forgot that he actually had a thing up there. And he was experimenting with all of this stuff with electricity and magnetism, and how we actually have the ability to have free power and free this and free that. Like this whole weird stuff that's happening on our planet, I don't get it. It's tripping me out. And I'm doing my best to like expose like what's happening, to the world, and getting people on board to know that there's actually something else, and that we've been lied to about a lot of things. And America is a younger um, culture, so history, kind of when it gets written by those who won, they kind of discard everything that was before. And there was some really cool stuff that I'm discovering, that I'm like, you know what? I didn't think this is what the world was about. And now I'm starting to see things a lot differently. And that's why I got like a D in history. Because American history was a joke. It was a joke.
It's very interesting. You're talking about some of the things that you talked about makes me think of the Grand Canyon. When I go to the Grand Canyon, and I've been there just twice, each time my eyes just tear up because I feel that this is the heart of this land. We call different lands on Earth. We call them by names because of the government and the nations and everything. But in the end, it's the heart of Mother Earth. But this country really seems to me more like the layers that you see in the canyon. Then
Mm,
I know the melting pot that we say they want us to be, because it isn't going to be a melting pot when there's so. Uh, a melting pot is like just become the same, but you can't be the same. It's, in fact, the excitement is to be different,
mhm,
while having some things which are, something that, let's say, some sort of a culture which helps people to live together.
mm,
And by and large, it has happened. By and large, that is the beauty of this place, that we are all being able to live together. You also
mhm,
spoke of language. And although English is not my second language in the sense that I mean, I dream in English, but because, the British ruled India
okay,
and much of our education's in English, but
okay,
but the way we speak and what we mean by what you were saying, what do you actually mean when you're
yeah,
saying something? If you're being very, like I used to do qualitative research, that was in which you do these focus groups, group discussions. And when I came here, I realized I won't be able to do that. Not because I don't know the language, but because I don't know when people are trying to say what they mean when they say something. Are they being too polite? Are they hiding what they really feel? I won't know it. To me,
Mm-hmm.
it's like a slate, especially in a culture where people are trying to be politically correct. You know,
Yeah.
so I just gave that up and went on to do other things. So language is so much more than the words we use. It is also how we are saying it, why we are saying it, and to whom we are saying it. And
Mm-hmm.
then, of course, how the other person, how are they receiving everything? Sometimes you wonder how communication takes place at all.
I
That
know.
is the beauty of the human condition. Somehow we are able to relate to one another. Why do you feel that happens? How do you feel that people are able to relate?
Uh, when you can kind of get into more than the emotion, but get them to feel what or and relate, that feeling of, and that's why I don't know if it's always right. It doesn't always work, but I try to come up with like, oh well, I can understand what you're going through because this happened to me. But sometimes people get offended and think that you're making it about yourself then. But I'm like, no, I'm just trying to relate to you so that way you can see that you're not alone. So it's kind of interesting. It just depends on how traumatized the person can be, because like I guess everybody has different, traumatic instances. And here in the United States, we've been at war 89% of the time that we've been a country. And so, we're looking at, our grandfathers and grandmothers and great grandfathers and great grandmothers have been doing this for a long time. And so there's this deep wound, here in the United States. And then you have like the 50s, which, it brought in like, well, now we got to be polite and everything, it's the nuclear family. And now, but then the 80s came and then the 90s, and now it feels like it's starting to go backwards a little bit, as far as conservative, because back then I feel like, that I was not necessarily able to express myself so much, but it was more just, people weren't afraid to offend, I guess. And because that was kind of like the punk rock movement, where everyone was just kind of like rah, and then you have the heavy metal movement where people were just expressing themselves in different, ways. And now that's starting to die off. Like the punk movement, the heavy metal movement isn't there. And that actually helped me express my anger, the trauma that I had. Not only was I carrying through my ancestors through epigenetics, but just through my own experiences as a child. And so, I feel like, when I can share these things with people and say, that I get you. And it's not about compassion, because even the word compassion, if you look it up, you're making it about yourself. It's not really about the other person. It's more about how you're feeling with that person. Now you're making it about you. You're not really making it about them. But empathy is a little different, because now you're just going, okay, I can see that this person's having this issue. What can I do to help them? And really, it's just being supportive and silent. I don't know if you ever read. I'm sure you've heard of it. The men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Yeah, and that was a great thing in there. It's like women, we just need to be heard. You know, we just need to talk. Like if you ever had your girlfriend just be like blah, 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 and you have to just go uh-huh, and you don't give them advice, because if you give them advice, they're gonna be like, I didn't need your advice, blah, and they're gonna might hang up because they're frustrated. And so I think that with men, I've learned that they need to also be heard, but they also need to go away and have their den and their cave and process it and women have to pull them out of that, so that way they're not always, so self and focused that there's a whole world outside of them. So I feel like there's quite a bit of different psychology in this, because everyone's different too. On top of that, it's just learning how to read them. Like, like for example, this weekend, I was, I saw this woman that I had talked to earlier at this concert that I was at. I was backstage, and I was like, oh, there she is. I was going to go look for her, but then she like beelined it, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna like take a moment, and not not chase after her, if that makes any sense, because sometimes people just don't want to be talked to, or they don't want to interact, and that's okay too. So I feel like, if we just learn how to read each other, and that's by experiencing, right? Like you're talking about on a grand scale.
I'm going to jump a little into the name of your podcast. And how did you think of naming it Poppy's Field Project?
Well, it has to do with the Wizard of Oz, and the poppies will put them to sleep, and that was it's a good movie. There's a little story back behind story that I won't go into, but that's the main deal. Is it has to do with that storyline actually shows us how to free ourselves from, from the legalese system, the spiritual system, or how we can use our mental mind and our heart chakra. And it has a lot of symbolism in it. We actually did a whole podcast on that, so it's like one of my favorite scenes.
Okay, that sounds very intriguing and something for me and also for our listeners to go into. Because sometimes when I have these podcasts, then I read up and learn a little bit more about the person if I don't know them.
Mhm.
But I really felt that in this one, I did see a few of your podcasts, but I said I want to go into it exactly for that. What happens when two people just meet one another? Where do they find that, as I was saying? The meeting ground. One of the things that you've been talking about and we've been touching upon is waking up. Do you
Mhm.
feel that in general, like when you step back, when we're very focused, we see all these little pieces, bits and pieces of separations. But when you step back in your quiet space, do you feel that the world is waking up to, and what are we waking up to?
Hmm. A good question, because I'm not around a lot of people a lot. So I'm now just getting out there. Um, so I mean, yeah, I have to say yes. From 4 years ago, yes. Because I mean, I knew what was going on. I knew it before it was even going to happen. I didn't know what it was, but I knew it was coming. I could feel it. And then astrology too, on top of that, was like, you gotta, there's some stuff coming up, you gotta be careful. We had that Pluto return that started in 2020. And I was panicking because I didn't know what to do, and I was like, oh my God, what do we do? But yeah, I think that now that people are like, wait a minute, but I have a feeling, based on Strauss and Howe, which is this book called it's Generations or the Fourth Turning. We're repeating 4 cycles. And so it might just end up going back to what it was. 80 years, every 80 years we have a crisis, but this is a big one because of Pluto return, of the United States being born. So, and it actually, that affects a lot of the world, because America has been like a leading, uh, you know, I don't want to call it a ruler or anything like that, but it's kind of, other countries have looked to us. I would say, don't follow us. I mean, there's some things that are good, like we want to, have peace and love and kindness, but at the same time, it's Hollywood and a lot of other things that are kind of corrupting, people. And I can understand like why some religions, have this. like no TV, uh, you know, like I was raised Seventh-day Adventist actually, and I couldn't eat black pepper. There was no TV, no sodas, no meat, and I just kind of went with it. So I think that we're gonna go back, but that doesn't mean that I don't even know if there's evolution, honestly, because I think that the Akashic records, I think the all already knows everything. So I think it's kind of just a cycle that we need to break free from slavery. Honestly, I think we're all not literally slaves, but that's the offensive aspect. I think that people have learned that we are not worthy of abundance and sharing, like you were talking about, because I think it's really important. Like I can't wait. I hope it happens in our lifetime where we can all live together, because I love it. I love being able to finally get through to somebody, because I'm seeing it too, like through some of my followers. They're just like, because of you, and it's not because of me, I'm just a reflection, um that they're seeing things differently, and I'm like, it's all within you. All I'm doing is planting a seed, which is really, really cool. So I think that Manishki, all you have to do is plant seeds. We don't have to rule or control. And I think that's the main thing. Stop controlling everything, you know, let people figure it out, especially children, you know, let kids be kids. Like, we're telling them what to do all the time. What do you think?
Absolutely. You've hit upon something which is so important for me, and that's parenting. Because when I had children, I said, "Oh my gosh, no one's ever taught us how to raise children," and I realized that's really what is needed. It's needed that in that chaos, that's how the star comes to shine. And when I was raising my children, I realized that more than talking to them, we have to listen to them.
Mm.
Somebody told me once when my daughter was became a teenager, have you told her how to be with boys? Have you told her how to be careful? So I said, I told my daughter, I said, people tell me that I should be giving you a lecture and telling you what you should do. So if I had to tell you how you should behave, what would I tell you? Do you know? She told
Ah.
me 20 things. I probably would have just told her 10. She Exactly. If we
Wow.
listen to them, they know everything. We just
Yeah.
have to ask them. And I think it was because of my mother. She didn't give us lectures. And I
Mm.
remember when I was in college once, I said, your mind really expands in college. You're reading everything, you're opening, you're with people of your own age. So I look at things a little differently. Like even when my son was older, so when he was going to college, I didn't tell him you're going there to study, get a grade. I mean, we're Indians. The only thing we know is how to tell somebody to do well, to get grades, to become an engineer, doctor, etc., etc. I told him you're going go to college because that's the only time in your life when you will be young enough to be independent, but also only with people mostly of your age. You will never again be in this kind of environment where people
Mm-mm.
are, and that was a time when he tells me they used to have intense discussions. They would argue and discuss with one another and go out and be friends. I mean, they were friends, but they would speak their mind. That was so beautiful, you know?
Mm.
And
Mhm.
and that's how I realized really you just have to allow people to be, and they develop the way they have to be, but you
Mhm.
must see behind what is apparent. And that's why even in today's world I like to see behind what's apparent. And to
Mhm.
me, therefore, I always feel, I just feel very hopeful. People sometimes tell me, well, I like to be realistic. I said, then
Mhm.
listen to the little whispers. The
Mhm.
whisper of peace is as powerful and as important as the shout of war.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
it's so boring. Two people having a conversation or a cup of tea, isn't going to make the news, but it is exactly what makes this world run.
Mm. Yeah, sitting with another and just experiencing their experience, their reflection. So do you think that we're improving? Do you think that people are waking up? I mean, you're probably more out there than I am, but I feel a difference. I don't know how far it's going to go before if it goes backwards. What do you think? Or do you think we're really ready to like kind of say, okay, we're enough? Like, let's get rid of the governments. Let's start self-governing ourselves. What do you think?
I don't think the get rid of government, because that's an outer thing. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
it always surprises me how much importance people give to political leaders and
Right.
treat them as if they are
Yeah.
gods, giving them too much importance. But I do feel that behind this openness and the peacefulness and the waking up, more important is the waking up. I do feel that more people are waking up because I mean I'm in touch with different groups of people, and and people of all different countries.
That's
That's
great.
the beauty of living in Miami, you have people of countries that I'd never. I went recently to Ecuador, and my Spanish has become very rusty because I've not been speaking enough. So I'm a complete stranger in a strange land. But I went with a group, but I felt so much at home. The people are so wonderful, so welcoming, made you feel, just going out of the way to help one another. And that doesn't make news, but that
Mm-hmm.
is the reality of how human beings are.
Mm-hmm.
Human beings are really so much better than we get to know. So if you say that you weren't allowed to watch the TV, as long as we don't watch too much of media, I think we are fine.
I think we are too. And I think that's a big problem right there a lot of these newscasters, they're all owned by like what, maybe five different organizations. And it can be very biased. And, I ask people to start thinking for themselves. And that's on Puppies for Project. It's all about think for yourself, start questioning everything, because what if your reality is what you're creating? What if so if you wanted to change that, because that's what they're saying in physics, right, where you could actually think and it will happen. Like, just for example, simple thing that happened to me this weekend. I saw somebody wearing a camo sweater, and it was a really cool color, and I was like, oh, I want one. I literally went out to this free box in Telluride, found it within like 2 hours. Like, that's how quickly you can manifest things, and I
Yes.
didn't even pay for it, And so I think that our minds are, but when it comes to bigger projects like world peace, that's a lot more. We have to really dig in and start uprooting all the media, all the things that we've learned, all the schooling, all the, literally take out all the things that, are no longer useful, because, the United States educational system has been really literally to enslave the people, not to actually free them. And it's really interesting. That's a whole nother podcast that we can get into some other time. But it's very interesting. Like when I just found out like the word legal meant, undoing God's law, I was like, whoa, that's a big statement right there. And so I'm hoping that is what people start wake up to, is saying that, okay, we need to stop putting so much, attention on these people, on these political leaders, because I'm sorry, but I don't like any of them. I don't trust any of them, honestly. And then a lot of people my age and below don't, and that's the thing that matters, is the younger generations. We need to start listening to them, and like, I love what you said. Tell me what you would want me to, what you would say. That is brilliant. Like, where did you even come up with that? That's so brilliant. This is why I love having conversation, because now I can use that. That's a tool, because now I don't have to ask, or I have to figure it out, telling them, oh, you should, use a condom and blah, 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 blah. No, you let them tell you. And then you can say, okay, I think you got it. This sounds pretty good. You have a good plan. And then, and if they, well, is it cool if I throw in a couple things, And if they don't want to hear it, okay, it's their journey, right?
Yeah, it is exactly. And because I saw, because I remember from my own childhood that children are so wise in so many different ways, and
Mm,
if adults don't listen to them, they just then they have no trust and faith in them, and they just won't tell you anything. And I
mm.
realize it's more important to listen than to just keep telling them things. They hear enough. And they won't listen because it
No.
doesn't ring true to them. We have to
Yeah.
get it's like for anyone. They say when you want to speak to someone, walk in their shoes.
Mm,
What more important than to walk in the shoes of the children and understand that they know more about their life than
mm,
we do,
mhm.
you know? So yeah, there's so much I could say about that. But I have actually one. I had made lots of little websites, and one of them was on parenting.
Oh,
Bec-
yeah.
Yeah,
I
that
mean,
was.
that's something that they've been trying to figure out forever. I mean, I think it used to be simple where the tribes, the women would take care of the children at a certain age, and then the father would, like would take the sons and teach them how to, be a man in the world. And that's not happening. That's one of the issues here in the United States is that, the
Yeah,
women need to start backing off, like when they have sons, at the age of 7 to 12 years old, they're supposed to be with the men, you know, and to learn how to be a man. And this is the awakening that I am seeing, is the men that are my age or younger, they're realizing that they lost out on that opportunity. But now they're like, okay, well, what do I do? And then, I'm like, well, I don't know. I'm a woman. You need to go find, the men to help you with that. I remember I was in this one situation on a Zoom call, and this guy was like, "Oh, we need women to teach the men." I'm like, "No, no, 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 no. We need to step away. The women need to really let the men figure this out, because I feel like women have really figured out their masculine and feminine sides. Not all of them, maybe, but I feel like I do. I can speak for myself. And so now, and that's something that all of us are going to have to do on our own now. And it's helpful when you hang out with, like, real, not, I don't know, I want to say real men or real women, because that's just silly, but someone that knows that we are different, we, like, I was just reading the other day that they're saying that the Y chromosome is disappearing. It's slowly disappearing. I was like, what? So I mean, it's not going to happen like overnight, but we might end up like coming back into one thing again, because I believe that we were Hyperboreans. The Hyperboreans were hermaphrodites. So who knows what's going to happen with evolution when it comes to that, And I think that's kind of what we're experiencing right now, is like learning how to come back as one, right? And because I don't know, all this like independent stuff, because that's what, the United States really kind of nailed into this timeline, is like be independent, be independent, be independent. But now you can see the other generations are starting to group together, because that's what happens. So they can't just change and separate us anymore. I think we're coming together, like you said. Like I really do. I think we are. I see it. Not everything, but at least start in our groups, because I found that, and I don't know if this happened to you, but after a few years or so, um, people just kind of started falling away, because I was going somewhere else, and they're going somewhere else, and I didn't get so emotional or upset about it anymore. It was hard with some of them, but for the most part, I just kind of just moving forward, because I realized that I'm recollecting myself, not learning, but recollecting that because it's all within me. I know it and I can feel it. And I'm reminded every day by beautiful, reflections of myself of like what I want to do and what is needed. Um, and that's just to be authentic and not care, and not be offended. Because my podcaster, one of my podcasters, she can offend people. And I have to say to her, I'm like, girl, I get you. I love you. I can accept you, but other people aren't ready for you. Okay. And we can't just be treating each other like that all the time. And so that's something she has to learn too, because I want her to be authentic because I don't even think she is being authentic. I think it's like trauma and brain damage and whatever. But so it's like we aren't really truly who we think we are. We think we are who we are, but it's gonna be interesting to see. Like, I think that people are starting to realize that they aren't who they are, and that's the awakening. They're like, wait a minute, I think we're a lot more than that. And they're willing to experiment with like, psychedelics to get there. But I always recommend people to, work with a someone that can help you, because it's like a facilitator. Like I help facilitate people. And I think it's really important, because some people, they've never had that experience and it can take you down a really dark road. So I know, because I know it's out there. A lot of the podcasters have been talking about it from the 60s and 70s, but now it's becoming, again, coming back into the limelight. And um, I say what comes to your heart. We'll figure it out. I don't know how.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, the indigenous in different countries, they have been using plant medicine in a medicinal way, and in a sacred way. And
right,
and that's what helps to bring about healing. And it actually is happening in the world, something that you'd said a little while ago. And that is that what is actually happening in the world? Why are we seeing so much of discord? Someone had asked me once, because they thought, because I guess I'm usually looking positive, and some people think that if you're very positive and happy, you must be foolish. So she used to keep referring to me as, I don't know, Pollyanna or something like that.
yeah,
It
yeah,
took me, unless, see, that's what I mean about not understanding Americans. Unless you
mm,
tell me to my face, I think you're being
right,
Pollyanna. I thought she's just telling me a story.
yeah,
I
yeah,
think 15 years later, I asked her, did you mean me every I didn't know what to say.
yeah.
So someone asked me, when so many horrible things are happening, how come you look so calm? And she was listening, and I
Mm,
said, this is my time to explain myself to her. And
mm,
I said, because I'm fighting all the time.
mm,
The world is so much worse than you can even know. There are so many more wars and so much of strife going on, which is not very popular and which doesn't affect the countries. So it doesn't come in the news, but it's happening and for a long time. But it
right,
is so much better than you can even dream. And I
right.
decide which side, what
Mm,
I'm going to strengthen.
mm,
I'm not going to strengthen what I feel is not for the highest good of all. And the highest good is happening. And it can only happen when we stay in that stage of calmness, because in calmness, you're still, and you're really wide open, and you're
mm,
looking at everything that's happening, what is apparent and what is not apparent.
mhm,
You know, that's why
mhm,
I feel these discussions and conversations are so important, Nova, because
mhm,
your life is very different from my life. And yet, if we don't talk to one another, how will we know what's happening in the
right,
world? It's
right.
and because you're looking at your life in an authentic way, and maybe we even find some area, like you were saying, which we may not fully agree with, which we may have a different view on. Like I was thinking about what is my feeling about, like when you said the boys should go because the men can teach them how to be. But I realized that someone had told me once that um, like we tell boys, oh, you should be manly, but we
Hmm.
rarely tell women now to be womanly. We
Right.
allow girls to be free. Like you said,
Exactly.
women have been able to join together their masculinity and femininity. But men have not fully been accepted in that way,
Right.
and it's difficult for them. So when I got married, I used to tell my husband sometimes there should be classes of how to be a husband, and how to be a
Oh,
wife. Nobody
seriously.
really teaches you how to do anything,
They have no idea how to treat a woman. I'm like, what? This is why I'm single. I'm like, ugh, I just kind of give up at it at this point. Because I was getting so angry. I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. I finally love myself. I'm okay. If somebody comes around, awesome. Because it's wow, it's so true. There does need to be a class.
Yeah, but I was very lucky because I had very wise things spoken to me.
Mm.
And I've been married for like years and years. And one of the things which I met my husband when we were both 21. And,
Wow.
and I remember I used to tell him, I was one of the, I didn't want to get married. If you do this, I'm going to divorce you. And in India, nobody divorces. So you can imagine that I was one of those. I mean, didn't look like a firebrand, but I guess I was in this.
Yeah.
And one day he told me, let's just decide one thing. We will not divorce. There will
Mm.
be years when we love one another and times we hate one another, but
Hmm.
let's just decide not to. So that gives you that anchor. Oh my gosh, I've got to try and work things out.
Yeah.
But it's not easy. And I realize the most important thing for that is you've got to be friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've got to give one another space. You don't have to do everything together.
Hmm.
If he likes golf, you to go do your thing. He does it,
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
it is. Live your life. If you can
Hmm.
give one another that kind of space of thought and feeling, then it's not easy at all. It's not at all easy, but it's something that's, if you feel it's important, that is the only way to have. And it's the same with our relationship with the world, with our
Mm.
relationship with our groups, and with how we are looking at our world. I feel because so many of us have been sending light, healing, waking up. So now we are waking up to all these things.
Yeah.
All of it is just seeking the light and is going away. It's
Mm.
not here to stay. So
Hmm.
we just have to hold space for it to go its way.
No, I just got goosebumps because you're 100% correct on that. Just let it do its thing. It's going to work itself out, And I think what I felt when you said that was when you said that you guys were just going to work it out. Well, my thing was that I've never been in that kind of relationship. I was in a 10-year relationship one time, but it was not working out. I wasn't married, so I left it because I felt like it was dead weight. And unfortunately, this person is, I don't know if he's passed yet or not, but he didn't take care of himself, and I was losing me in the process. So I had to walk away from it. But I think that that's kind of like, I don't want to be around somebody all the time, but I think that that's maybe what's kind of like makes people, that are my age, feel like I'm a little overwhelming because I want to hang out with them all the time, but I don't need them or want. Okay, there's no need or want. It's just, but if I'm going to be in that situation, I want to finally experience something that I've never had before. So, but I may have lost my mark, and that's okay, because I agree with you. Like, we should be able to just go off and do it ourselves. And you're right, we need space, but I think it just depends on, where that person is, because I would love to be able to travel the world and sit and talk with people all around the world about what is making them tick. How do you guys do this? Maybe they have ideas that we don't have, or maybe we have it all in us. I don't know. And I think that is, again, going back to how do we relate to another is just, it's just sitting there and not being in judgment with of like a situation, and just, you know really sitting in their shoes and saying, this is how it's going to work. And I think that's what really needs to happen for a lot of people. And I think this is why the 4 cycles keep on continuing, is that we need to experience that, because we forget it somehow. We're too distracted by things that are not important. Like, I think what's important is friends and family and community, not these CEO jobs and fame. And I mean, that's cool if you want to do that. It's not for me. But what's really important is, being able to connect, and realize that, we're all just in the same ocean, just in different boats. That's it.
I like that. I like that analogy a lot. Yes, that metaphor. We're all in the same. So if you were on that boat, what's happening on that boat? And where is it right now?
Oh man. Well, I'm actually on a kind of on a vision quest right now. And just shedding off the last 30 years, because I went through a lot. And a lot of people might remember my friends on Facebook when I used to be on it. They were so envious because I was doing so many things. I was like, it literally was not easy. I did all of it pretty much on my own. I had a couple relationships here and there, um, but now I actually have, really good friends all over the place. And actually, I'm coming to Florida. So I was like, oh, I don't know how far Naples is from Miami, but I might make it over there and say hey.
Come to Miami.
I know.
It's not a huge state.
Yeah, and I've done a lot of traveling, and so travel is, I feel like that's kind of one of the things that has given me the chance to not judge people. And so that's kind of where that my boat has taken me in this ocean, is to look, that I realize I'm just looking at my reflection everywhere, and that helps heal the ancestral trauma, of the epigenetics of like racism or whatever was there. Now I can just go, oh, that's just me over there, okay. And I'm going to love that person regardless. Doesn't mean I have to like it, but to love it and forgive, and honoponopono, which is please forgive me, I'm sorry, I love you, thank you. Just to remind myself that everything that we purchase, everything that we receive, is made by somebody, and or something, and who knows what they're going through, and that they're just, again, just a reflection of a fractal, of a fractal of a fractal of one thing. And so how are we being so sadomasochistic to each other? I have no idea. Like, somehow we gotta, I mean, I get it. That's a whole nother story, but it's just like, okay, we need to wake up and get out of this dream of that we're separated. We'll be a lot more happier.
How
you know,
did you learn the Ho'oponopono?
sorry, say that again.
How did you learn the Ho'oponopono?
Oh, actually, one of my he's one of my Telegram friends. He would come on to the podcast. He's actually one of the administrators to my channel on Telegram, and he said it, and he I was like, wow, that's actually really really cool. And I started using it, and one of my ex, the last one here, I would say it to him, and it was really difficult for him to hear it. He would just be like, no, no, and because he's not ready yet to forgive himself, even, right? Because I'm just him in a different way, of course. But so it's been, you would be surprised. I remember one of my girlfriends, her mother, she snapped out at someone, a man that, you could tell that she had been advanced. Because I get it, I've been advanced, over the years. As women, it happens to us. And she snapped at this guy. And I just turned at her and I said, Honoponopono, please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you for him. And she almost went into tears. And it was so profound. So anytime I see a situation, I'll just say that. Even if it wasn't me, I mean, it is me, but it's a reflection of me, right? So I'll say it for that person that they can't, because they don't see what's happening. And wow, it makes a huge difference.
I think it, yes, I think it would be so nice if just for a minute, if you could say it for whoever is listening, maybe like a little meditation, or however you would like to present it, that would be beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, like even just sitting in a chair or using a pen or, simple things of Ho'oponopono. And then once you go through all of that, like you look in a mirror and you do it for yourself, because that's who you really need to work through is forgiving yourself for falling into matter from, a spirit, which is Pisces to Virgo, in the zodiac. And it's a long fall, but some people don't believe we chose to be here, but I don't know. I think some of us had contracts to help heal this planet or help remind ourselves, right, that this is an illusion. It's real, but it's not the truth. We are forgetting that we are all one and that we can forgive each other. So it's pretty cool, to I think, to be a part of that, and um, it's enlightening and it's healing for myself as well. And to not have a big ego over it too. It feels so great to not that I don't care, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It just is what it is until it isn't, and then I'm okay with that. I don't need the praise or whatever, I'm good with, just seeing myself that it is waking up after all this time, it's been a lot. Like, for example, my high school reunion, I haven't been to any of my high school reunions. Have you?
Well, I didn't study here, so yeah, I
Oh,
haven't
yeah,
been
so
to
you
high
haven't been.
school. Yeah.
Okay. So I haven't been to any of them, but this last year, supposedly everybody, my girlfriend said everyone was grown up finally, and that everyone talked to each other and everyone could come together. And I think it was because of what happened 4 years ago. And they realized how precious and valuable we really are. So I think that was a really good key. It was that Pluto return of the United States in Capricorn. And since then, so I'm like, okay, now I can go. Now that they're ready for me, because they were not ready for me. And once I went because I switched schools, I was in a private school, and then my great grandmother died, and she was funding it. And then I went to normal school, like a public school, um, and then when I went to junior high, I'll tell you how old I am. Um, it just changed, People were, I don't know. It was an interesting time, and it was so cliquish, like what you're talking about. I mean, why are people so? I don't know. I mean, it's literally been branded, to think that, it's just like the caste system, right? Same thing here, I was dirt poor. But yet I was brilliant and I couldn't express myself that I didn't feel. So now I'm finally doing it through my podcast, Um, I'm lucky, and I want everyone to know that they can do the same, get out of what they don't feel comfortable with, because do the opposite of what you've been doing and you'll be surprised what you'll find and who you are.
That's true.
Beautiful.
And just stressing on the Ho'oponopono, the beauty of it is that it has three very major alchemical instruments, you can call them. One is forgiveness, which is forgiveness for self and others. The other is love. And the
Mm-hmm.
third is gratitude. How beautiful. Each of them can just, and in just four little sentences that have now been, the Ho'oponopono is very big, but it's been encapsulated in these
Yeah.
four phrases, really. Would you like to say them?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Ho'oponopono. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. I'm gonna do it one more time. Please forgive me. I'm sorry. I love you. Thank you. I almost want to cry almost every time I say it
It's so beautiful.
because we've been so hard on ourselves, you know?
Yeah.
Mm. It's
Yeah.
intense. It's not always happy. There's a lot
No.
of darkness in this world that we need
Yes.
to forgive.
Yeah, that's true. In fact, that's one of the things which I had met a sage and who used to be in the Himalayas, and I told him, "Tell me something. What should I be doing?" And he said, "Forgive yourself." And I
Mm.
said, "What have I done wrong that I should forgive myself? What does he see in me?" And I realized after that we are always blaming ourselves. Anything goes wrong, we think something I could have done to prevent it. You know and we have to stop that self blame, but then continue to doing something about it.
Mhm.
Do you have any daily practice, Nova? Do you do something to keep yourself in this state?
Oh yeah. It's quite a bit of a list. Not every day because especially when you're on vacation or traveling.
Yeah.
But I do castor oil packs on my lower abdomen to help clear out any kind of energy in the solar plexus, for fibroids or, whatever. Um, Meditation with hemisinks, which is through Robert Monroe. Not every day, but, pretty much every day. If I'm traveling, it's a little more difficult sometimes, but I make time for myself in the morning. Like one of my things is when I'm at home, I don't plan anything before 11 o'clock. So that way I can get my routine down, like whether it be supplements or a shake with like a bunch of stuff in it, and taking a bath, just loving myself, right? And I do that honoponopono, all the time. Is when I remember it, especially like when you're driving down the road, like I do, and you see an animal that has been hit by a car, I will immediately just say honoponopono, and I've been doing that before I actually knew about honoponopono. Um, and so I also, just uh, again, like just kind of, it takes me a while to come into my body. So I just, I learned to realize that, I'm more than this physical body. And I just remind myself that we are a lot more powerful than we think we are. And just a lot of love and forgiveness. And I eat keto too, which is a huge difference. Um, instead of eating a bunch of sugars and carbohydrates and it's changed the way I feel because for women here in the United States, a lot of us, were affected by the food supply and also birth controls. So, having to undo all of that and heal my body, with like food that I grow or somebody else or go to a local market, or trade some kind of energy, whatever it might be. It's going back to those basic things that we used to have, like back in the 50s, I think, or the 40s. I mean, it hasn't been that long that it kind of just disappeared. So it's, going into those practices. How about you? What kind of practices do you have?
The most difficult thing for me is to have a routine, and it's something that I'm trying to really get into. I remember when I had my Ayurveda coach, I had one here, and I told her once that if I think I'm going to do the same thing every day, I feel it's like dying. And she was so startled, but every day I understand from myself more than anyone else, because that if someone says no, it doesn't mean they mean no. You have planted a seed. So she planted that seed. She had to take my reaction as a result of that. And that's exactly what's happening in the world, the reaction to the seeds that we've planted. But every day now, I think of that. I think of the early morning, what you have to do, a sort of a routine for the body, for the mind, wake up with gratitude. Uh, and for me, the hardest, the gratitude doesn't mean being grateful only for what we like, but even grateful for the challenges. Because if I'm happy with myself today or with my life, it's because of those challenges, not in spite of them, because of all the traumas or the problems or whatever we've had in our life. We were forced to get out of that. We got the momentum to get out of it, and so I'm grateful for that. And then my early morning, actually, even before I get out sometimes of bed, I may do some writing. For me, that's my self expression, and that's what helps me to stay sane and happy. And then the rest of the day just goes in different ways.
I love it. I mean, because one thing it is hard to have a routine. Oh my gosh. Like, I mean, I think what's healthy is one, okay, so meditation is definitely, you have to keep up on that. Like, if you want to change your subconscious mind, you have to meditate every single day, up to 6 months to a year, in order to have both your left and right hemisphere to connect to each other. And that's part of the issue, why we're so disconnected with the earth and each other, is that usually here in the United States you're just using like one side, like the left side, the analytical aspect. I think it's the left. um, and so once I did that, and I actually had some brain damage, from whatever, a few things, not getting beat up or anything like that, but just hitting my head and getting those electrodes. It helped smooth out the trauma, so I wasn't obsessing on things. Because a lot of us, we don't realize that we're not ourselves, because just the brain itself is needs healing. And so the doctor that I had two doctors. I had a naturopathic, and her husband was this electro. He put these electrodes on my head, and it didn't hurt or anything like that, but it just helped smooth it out. And after that, I could actually I broke free from compulsive thinking of like relationships, because in my chart, my natal chart, I have like a stellium in Libra, and also in my seventh house, which is all about relationships. And so it's all I've been obsessing about my entire life. And then once I had this, and then I started traveling, and I started experiencing a whole nother world, I finally was able to just kind of go, okay, enough. I think I've learned, not learned, but recollected that, and just having, hormones, man. Like, hormones were so difficult, with like eating grains to sugars. I didn't eat a lot of sugar, but grains turn to sugar, and I realized that that was a huge part of it. It was making my estrogen levels go a little out of whack. So I'm really grateful that I've gotten to this point. It's taken a lot of work, because I mean, they should have school just to learn how to be a human, and I think that that was taken from us, because it's a lot of work. Like, because once you get to that point, then you can drop it, because now it's in your head. Not drop it, but you don't have to do it every day. You
Actually,
know,
maybe it is because of going to school that we've forgotten that.
I agree. I
Yeah,
agree.
because then it forces you to do something. It forces children to do something they don't really want to do. It forces parents to make their children focus on grades when you'd rather just hug. Like, I remember my daughter saying once, every time you hear me laughing, you come and tell me, "Have you done your homework?" I'm saying, "Oh my gosh, you're so right."
And that's what we've done to kids, and we've done it to ourselves, and it's actually pretty horrible. Like, now that I think about it, I didn't have any kids, thank God, because I knew I was probably going to destroy them, until I got older. Now I'm like, oh, I can do it now, but that's neither here or there. That wasn't my lifetime. Now it's to get on, on with all of you and help you guys out, help out the world, So you're so
Exactly.
right about that.
Yeah.
100%.
Sometimes you are being kept for being the mother to many children. They don't
Yeah,
have to
like
be
I
one
don't
of
want to
you.
be, you know what I mean? I get it now. I'm like, I don't want to control you. You're right. I don't. I just want to do me. Hey, and if you want to hang out, that's great. Let's hang out and like talk about philosophy and whatever, or create something. Now I'm wanting to create, I finally am not at that point where I don't know what
Perfect.
yet. I
That
don't know what.
that's because that's leading me to my question of co-creation.
Yeah.
What are you creating? What are you co-creating, Nova?
Well, um, my thing is community, and bringing people together and having different ideas. I think it's more of a philosophy than anything, which is interesting because a few years ago, or 2 or 3 years ago, I didn't really know what I was doing, but I looked at my chart, and it was telling me that I was going to be creating a whole nother philosophy. And by my experiences, and not everyone was going to be up to par with it and or accept it, and I'm okay with that too. I've gotten to that point, but now it's like there's some other things that are coming up. Like there's another podcast that I'm going to be creating. I'm not going to let go of Poppy's for Project, but this one's going to be a little different. I'm not going to share it quite yet, but it's going to be that. And then from there, I talked to the guy. I said, look, if this works out, let's make something of it. I really, really want to travel and, talk with people, and like there's this, do you remember that one on one of the co-creator on the co-creating festival thing that happened like it was like a month and a half ago or something like that, where there was these women, they travel and they plant trees and they play music. And do you remember that? I don't know if you heard that one.
Do they plant trees or do they talk with the tree elders? I know the one in which
Now, I
they.
think these ones specifically were planting trees, and they were
Oh,
like building, they would go and like, and they'd have food and music. And that's what I want, I just want to dance around a fire naked with people and create, build and cook. And like, I'm sure that, you've had, I don't know, I didn't have that experience. So I want a space like that. That's what I want to create, and so I'm like, how do I do that? And because Americans are still kind of hard, it's hard for them. I've been asking, and it's hard for them to kind of walk away from their jobs or, their lifestyles. And so
well,
I kind of,
I mentioned that I'd gone to Ecuador, and that was with for ceremonies with the curandera.
okay.
And there were people from all over the world. There were 45 women, and some of them came with their families, including children. And they come from as far away as Australia, and I was amazed that so many people have this kind of an interest. So we do have elders, and we do have the indigenous, and they're becoming more out there. They're starting to share their wisdom because they know that people are now willing to listen and learn in a respectful way.
Yeah, I agree. And I've been on 20 acres for the last 4 years. And maybe it's just not the right place. And maybe what I can do is just walk into a situation, instead of having to actually start it from scratch, add to it, and I think that that's something that we need to consider. is that because I've noticed like a lot of people on Telegram or other places, they bought property or all around the world, right? But nobody's coming. And I'm like, well, yeah, because you know, some people have to walk away from what they're doing and say, okay, I'm just going to go participate here. And because I think that this is going to be the new, not new, it's going to be our rebuilding of what was at one point, where there were tribes and communities where we're tighter, we take more responsibility of helping each other. That's why a lot of people are moving out of California and New York and taking over the smaller towns and raising the pricing of real estate. Honestly, I don't think they realize what's happening, but people are kind of getting prepared for what's going to come, because people have no idea what's coming. I mean, I feel it, but I'm not on that timeline. Do you think you can choose your timeline? It sounds like you can.
You can.
Yeah,
I have seen that. I mean, I call it a dimension, and I think you
I
mean the
agree.
same thing. I mean, it's like it was amazing. I saw 200 versions of once I was just talking to, and it was not even, we weren't meditating or doing anything. We were
Hmm.
just sitting. And I said, right this minute, I can see 200 versions of us. And right now, I'm choosing where I'm going to be. And it's
100%.
true. It's exactly what I was talking about, even a little way that when we say you calm down. The moment you do that, you've gone into another dimension because you're
100%.
suddenly seeing. And the moment, it's like what you're saying, Nova, that you're attracting people. You have all those followers who want to listen to what you're doing, is because you've already co-created a certain dimension, a place where people can be, and while they're there, feel maybe more authentic, or growth, or whatever each one may be taking. So definitely I think we can, but it's not easy. And whether we stay in where we want to stay is also not easy. It takes a lot of work, and it's a lifetime of effort.
It really is. And sometimes I get so frustrated. I'm just like, oh, it's so hard to be a human. Because I know my spirit knows that there's so much more. And so I just, in forgiving yourself and just being like, oh, and being patient with that. Oh my goodness. Like, what in the world? Like, how did we create this soup bowl of like, especially because if you were not raised, and you had to raise yourself and you had to raise your parents, and then you go out into society, and society's not accepting you, and you're just like, what's happening? I thought this is the way it was supposed to be. And then you have to decide, am I going to be me, or am I going to follow and be accepted by society? And I just decided to take the harder path, which is do me. But at the same time, I was still trying to please people. I didn't even realize it, and I lost who I was. And now I don't even know. I'm like, I mean, I know who I am, but I don't know what I want to do except for study and figure this out. But I know that if I just stop and listen, it's already there. But I wanted to know what happened, what really happened to us. Otherwise, I feel like we're just kind of going around with blindfolds, and we're just assuming everything. And that's why we're still offended, because we're assuming everything. We're all these hurt children, um, that haven't grown up, and haven't, developed into that, aspect of, I don't even like the word adult, because there's a weird vocabulary to that. Just a word of just being, just being. And it's a lot of interesting. I don't know. I don't know if I'm getting really close. I can feel it, because I do agree that you can put yourself in these dimensions or timelines, I like to call them. Because I feel like the dimensions are a little different, but it's been proven, that it's happening multiple, and you can choose Like, do you ever put your car keys down somewhere and you can't find them or anything? And then all of a sudden you go back and there they are.
Yes. Or even books. I've had things disappear. And I always say, well, the angels took them to someone who needed them and then they bring them back. But do you feel that it was you switching timelines?
Yes,
Ah,
I do. I really do. I think that we can go because they say that they're happening simultaneously all at once. So I think that some people can have the power or whatever. I think we all have the opportunities just getting into that. Like, for example, I could have sworn on a couple things this last weekend and I just said, it's got to be at the hotel. It's got to be at the hotel. It's just going to arrive there. It's there. Whether or not I brought it, it doesn't matter. It's just there. And it was there when I got back. And I was like, and I don't know if it was magic or not. I guess I don't really believe in magic. I think we are. I think magic was kind of a word that was made up to like make us feel like we're special when we actually are all special and we all have this capability. Like even like I have this copper water bottle. I lost it at the festival backstage somewhere. I was like, oh, whatever, I just gave up on it. That was Saturday. We went to the thing on Sunday, looked around, didn't see it. Well, I left. My friend was backstage working, putting stuff away. He was standing next to a one of those tents, that people stand underneath to keep the sun off of them. A huge thing of water just goes and like splashes and almost gets him. And he steps away and he looks down and there's my water bottle. The water was like, here's her water bottle. Because I was like, I let it go and I said, I'm going to get a new one. It's just going to happen. It's coming to me. And it came like that.
I think this is a great space to pause and just feel. Well, I love that your water bottle came to you and has been featured in this podcast. What do you feel that we've discussed in this? What do you feel that our listeners will receive from our conversation?
Oh, more relaxed, hopefully, and or not hopefully, to just be more relaxed and think, outside of their daily routine, that maybe it's time to start something different. Start to loving yourself, and that we all are connected and to forgive, and maybe that we have this bravery to, you know, step away from what we know and come into something different, and I think that that's how we're going to heal what's happening to the planet right now is just say, okay, maybe we should let kids be kids, and that's where it starts, and then it starts with us too, right? But it starts with them to let them. I'm really hoping that that happens. I'm not hoping I see that happening. I got to project the right words. Is really just seeing that we are really not being authentic. We are being controlled. Not all of us, but once we start to not care what anyone thinks, and that we're not doing any harm, just to be yourself. I think that that's what people are going to get out of this. That's what I really foresee. How about you?
I felt that too, Nova. I felt that uh, this conversation going into so many different areas. It's like starting with a spring and going off in different directions, like different streams of different rivers. And I hope that each person who's listening also discovers how many different creations that they can make of their own life as they discover who they are, and how important it is to just be able to connect with one another, to share, And this is how we are going to co-create the kind of world that we would like to live in. And I would like to remind our listeners and to request and invite everyone to really feel and dream and know, to become aware of what kind of life they want for themselves, for their families, their loved ones, and for the world. Because unless the world is in a certain way, no one person can live in the way that they fully want. The whole world has to transform, and it is transforming and changing together. And I hope that this conversation helps everyone to see that this is happening.
Yeah, I think that's good, and I would like to say one last thing before we plan to close up is that when you manifest, you want to visualize and believe it. Like you have to believe it. So if you're sad, it's going to turn into something negative. If you're happy and you're expressing joy, that will happen. And I actually had a boyfriend at one point who was like always put me down because I was excited about life. And I realized that what he was doing, he was putting curses on what I was trying to do. So if that's happening to you, maybe you need to rethink about what you're doing and how maybe you need to start separating yourself from those people. And that's okay. And at the same time, when you're manifesting, don't necessarily put a name or a person or a thing. I mean, you could say, I want this, but like, let's say that you wanted a new house and you had it all figured out in your head. Well, if you put every single detail in, you might lose out on something that's better. And that's the same thing with relationships, jobs, whatever, or your soul journey. It doesn't have to be so exoteric. It can be esoteric, which is inside. So that's just one of my little tips is not really labeling anything because you never know, you might get something better. And because I've manifested things literally in relationships, and I was like, wow, I was really specific on that, but there was something missing, and that I could have gotten better. So I'm going to be a little bit more open now.
That's a beautiful tip. Very, at the same time, practical and, like you said, and also esoteric. That's brilliant. Thank you so much, Nova. I'm very honored that you agreed to do this podcast with your busy schedule. I know
Yes.
you've been traveling,
Yeah, I
but
hope to come see you. And I'd love to have conversations with you some more. It'd be so much
yes,
fun.
and I already have an idea about what you were saying. Well, one, I want to know about your new podcast when it comes, but also about doing events and ceremonies together.
Yes,
Yes, I
I'm
think that
really
would be
interested in that.
wonderful.
Well,
Yeah,
let's talk some more about it.
we're going to talk.
When I come down there, I'll make a point to get down there. I don't know how far are you from Naples?
Um, in terms of hours, I'm not sure, but we'll talk
Okay.
about that.
Okay, cool. That was really be really great.
Yeah,
because I'm on board. Like I said, I'm even, willing to like start something new or, just jump on because I'm really good at organizing and getting things done. So
perfect. We're going to co-create wonderful things.
exactly. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun. I just enjoy your presence. You're a beam of light. I appreciate you so much. You're very beautiful.
Thank you so much, Nova. And as you said, it's a reflection,
Yes, exactly.
reflection of you.
And if anybody wants to check out my podcast, you can go to rumble.com and go to Wake Up, AM Wake Up, excuse me. And we're on there underneath Poppy's Throw Project. I do have, all the other, what are they called? I'm sorry, I'm drawing a
Link.
break. Links, yeah, and then links and platforms is what I was trying to say. That
Yeah.
I have so many podcasts that you haven't even heard yet because I've been saving them because they were on Telegram, so they will be transferred over by this October.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
When we publish this, we'll also put a link to
Okay.
your podcast.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would love to hear. I actually want to get into more of your podcasts, so Please share that with me again, because I know that I have it somewhere. I just don't listen to too many podcasts. It's kind of one of my things, but I really liked yours. They were fun.
Thank you. Thank you. That's very kind.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I love you, sister, and I hope to see you soon.